Hi everyone, welcome back. If you didn't catch it, Johan has released his first build video. I'll link that in the description below. Go check that out. Today in our shop we're up to the oiling and painting stage. So you can see just here in front of me I've got one panel up ready to paint. I have already gone through and done 2 coats of oil. That's reasonably boring to watch, so I thought I'd just get that out of the way so we can cover the painting, which is the main part. So I guess on the oiling, what I used was just boiled linseed oil. So that's, I buy that in the 4 litre containers. So there's different sorts of linseed oil, so I just thought I'd cover them because we do use different ones for the paint versus the oil. So you do have raw linseed oil and boiled linseed oil. So this is just the crushed oil from the crushed seed, and it's there's no VOCs, and it's a pretty safe product compared to some things. Now, it's not considered a drying oil. It is, when you do apply raw linseed oil, it's very slow to dry completely. So that's why if you're just using a plain oiled finish, you normally use another oil like tung oil, or you use boiled linseed oil, which dries faster. Now, to go from this to this, there's what they do is add a chemical, some drying agents, and which are on the toxic side of things. So you don't want to be swallowing it or messing around with your hands too much, but what that does, it chemically causes the chemical reaction to occur. So the drying process involves, if I get this right, the unsaturated fatty acids in the oil polymerizing and forming cross-linked chains, which then basically form a protective coat over the surface. So there's 2 ways that can happen primarily. One is under UV light, and the other is through chemical means. So back in period, they used to get boiled linseed oil by boiling it with lead oxide, which enabled the chemical reaction to occur faster. So nowadays they mix in other stuff to get the same effect, but this boiled linseed oil is basically getting that polymerization happening through chemical means. If you just use this, it's a lot slower, but basically the UV light in the sunlight will cause the same thing to occur, just over a much longer length of time. So what I've done on the joiners and on the frames, I've put 2 coats of boiled linseed oil. So that's all I'll do for these ones. You can see it's come up very nice finish on that, and this will be waterproof. And the good thing about this is you just come back and apply another coat over the top as needed. It's very easy and simple to maintain. There's no sanding or other upkeep needed. See here on the frames, well, you may not be able to see it, but it's come up as a good finish as well, but it's got that slight green tinge that we mentioned in the previous videos. So and that's why we're going to mix up some paint and cover that. There's also some of the process marks I talked about in the previous video about planing them out. So I've planed it smooth, but you can still see colour variations where that went through the mill. So all of that sort of stuff, plus the holes that I puttied up. I figured I'd cheat and just use putty on the screw holes because it's all going to be covered in paint anyway, and wasn't joined with a period joint, so there was no harm, no foul there on using a putty. So all that sort of stuff will get covered up by the paint. Now for the paint, what we're going to use is the raw linseed oil as the base, and what we add to that is mineral turpentine. So that just helps thin it down a bit and gets it to flow a bit better and absorb into the timber. And part of the reason we do the coats of oil first is because if you apply this to the dry timber, all this oil will get sucked out of the paint and it will leave the pigment sitting on the top. So what we do is coat just a couple coats of oil first, so that the timber is nice and soaked with the oil, and then this way this kind of sits on the surface, and then as it polymerizes, it forms that hard surface on the top and locks the colour in. So what I do is I grab these and then I mix them together in a 50-50 ratio, and I've got some that are prepared here. So that's my oil turpentine mix. And then what we do, we need to get some pigment into that. So that's the base. So from a pigment point of view, I use this colour oxide which you can get from Bunnings. There's all different colours, and you normally add this into concrete to make coloured concrete. Now this stuff lasts forever, but this is the smallest bag that I could get conveniently, and you can see the colours I've got to date are these ones. And I've used this on the long haul carved centre poles. That's why I've got the variation in colour. I've also got a blue, red and a green paint, which was made by Theodoric, and he's, shout out to him, all the ideas for this paint and help with all the recipes has all come from him and the research he did. And it's all based on period practices. Any sort of fine art paint as well is still an oil base with some pigment mixed in, so it's been done for centuries. There's nothing new or exciting about it, but trying to get all the ratios right and the mix was quite interesting. So what we do, we take this pigment and we put it into here. What we also do is add in some gypsum powder as a bulking agent, and you get that in the form of cornice cement, like for plastering your walls and whatnot. So that's from Bunnings as well. So this is a 50-50 oil turpentine mix. I do a 50-50 mix of the coloured pigment and the cornice cement, and then I mix these with this at whatever ratio I want to get in terms of consistency. So the more pigment you put to the oil, it's a much thicker paint and will go on tighter, thicker, so the darker colours mix up a bit thicker. If you want to do multiple coats or have a kind of a transparent look, you can put less pigment, more oil, and it'll flow better, and but you may need a couple more coats to get that consistent look. When I was first doing it, one of the paints had a much higher ratio of this, and it was actually the paint would actually flow across the surface of the timber, similar to silk painting, if anyone's done that. So it was very nice stuff to work with. So for today's purposes, what we're going to do is use this dark brown. Basically what I'm doing is just kind of paint it up so it looks like the old school post and beam aged timber. So once you apply years, decades, centuries of oil on top of timber, it turns that nice dark colour. So we'll do that. I'll mix that up now in front of everyone. So what I've been doing with the pole that I've been using previously, it just needs small amounts, so I just mix it up as I need, just by a little measuring spoonful. With this one, because I need to obviously cover a bit more area, and I'm also going to be using this on future projects. I'm going to start using these leftover nail boxes, and I've already used one for just the plain boiled linseed oil. I've got these little hooks to keep the paintbrush just suspended there and all neat and tidy. So what I'm going to do is just start mixing this up, and we do 1-to-1 pigment and cornice cement. As long as you're consistent with how you mix the colours, you can always just add more later, so there's no need to go too much to start with. It did take me a while to get the ratios nailed for what it for the consistency that I like to use. But the 50-50 mixer might be a slightly better ratio to use, but it's pretty easy to remember, and I don't have to write it down, so it seems to be working, so I just stick with it. That's 4 spoons of each. I'll just loosely mix this up. So when I was experimenting, you would have noticed there was a white pigment there. I thought I needed a very small amount of white, and thought I'd cheat and just try and use a corner cement that was white. Hopefully that would get me the white pigment, but it doesn't work like that. The corner cement is actually, or the gypsum is more of an opaque. It's a clear finish. So, which makes sense because when you mix it with your reds and whatnot, you don't want to get a pink paint, you want a red paint. So there's no worry about that. But you can see it kind of, does turn this paler brown because we've mixed in the white, but what I'll do is add the oil in, and you'll see, well, the oil and turpentine goes back to that dark colour pretty quickly. So you don't want to add too much of this in, or you can always add more pigment, but start on the light side, and then you can add more as needed. And I have just been mixing that with the paintbrush. You can see here it kind of just looks like mud, but and there's no real rule on pigment to oil ratio. Just if it's going on and you're finding that it's not, that it's see-through. There you go, just splashed in my eye. That was fun. If you're finding that the paint is see-through, just add a bit more pigment in. If you find that it's not flowing over the surface good enough, just add a bit more oil. I don't know if you can see that. So it is runny, but that's the consistency that we're after. So what I'll try and do is just bring you in a bit closer as I apply some of this. Okay, let's see how this goes. You see it just glides on. I'm not sure if it's coming up in the video or not, but you can see there's a little bit of grit in there, which is from the pigment. It's a pretty fine pigment powder, but you can still see there's some slight bits of grit to it. So the good thing about that is any little imperfections, if you paint over it, you can fill in some of those things to get a bit more of a consistent look. So, bring around here, just painted over the putty, which was white, and you can't see that through. So, and then there's some black stuff here. It's pretty. It's only a thin coat, but it covers everything really well. And you can see from this one brush, there's still spare stuff around here. It's actually covered quite a big extent of area, so you don't need much. It goes a long way. So that one brush covered those two surfaces all the way around to there. Right, so no one wants to watch me paint in slow-mo, so I've just got to set up a time lapse and get all this stuff painted. There you go, all four are painted. I've ended up using, I think it was 30 teaspoons of each of these. Tells me I need to get a bigger measuring device for the next lot when I do that. I'll leave this container just as is, it's all empty. I'll clean this one out with Terps, or they're cheap enough brushes, I might just throw it out, but I'll try cleaning it to start with. That all went reasonably well. The last batch I mixed, but you may be able to pick it up on hyperlapse, maybe not. I mixed more oil and pigment compared to the first one, so it flowed on really smoothly. It may end up a little bit translucent. We'll have a look when it dries. The one coat will be enough that I'll start doing all the willow weaving next week. If it does need a second coat, no dramas. I'll be doing more of this painting for some of the other projects coming up. So I will just touch it up then if needed. So that's it for this week. Hope it all made sense. If you've got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for the weaving of the willow. Oh, and no cracks were exposed in the making of this video. Johan, you need to work on that, buddy. See you next week.